check out these TikTokers. Also, don't send them any hate. Like and follow them.
I'm 29 weeks pregnant with a baby boy. My husband and I were really excited when we found out because a few years ago we suffered from an unfortunate loss of our baby at 24 weeks. Our baby just wasn't developing correctly and there was nothing we could do. It was just one of those sad things. I went to therapy for it and came to terms with it, but my husband never did. As much as I asked and begged, he didn't go. Now, every time we go to a doctor appointment, he essentially has a panic attack talking about how we're going to lose this baby too. It's been happening since I found out I was pregnant, so it's been 29 weeks of this. After my last appointment while coming home, my husband told me we should start considering the worst and look into urns and cremation in case we lose this one too. This is where I told him he needed to go to therapy and I wouldn't be having him come with me to any more appointments because he's stressing me out. He told me I'm being unreasonable and he's being realistic, that I can't stop him from going with me because it's his baby too. This was last week and he has been cold and still hasn't made a therapy appointment and honestly has been kind of hostile towards me. I'm what's considered a high-risk pregnancy. I know he's just scared we're going to lose our baby, but having him with me is maybe the cause of what could make us lose the baby because he makes me so stressed. Am I wrong in this situation?
What if I told you that I knew someone that liked to do the dirty with dead people? Yes, a corpse. And he's in jail right now. And I thought this was the perfect time to tell my story. It's not really my story, but since I know him, I'll take it as mine. Well, I went to high school with this guy. And he was very, very quiet, like he was the nerd of the class. Good thing that I grew up in a time where we wouldn't bully. Let's call him Gus. Well, he always said he wanted to work at the morgue. And we all thought it was a little weird, but weird in a nerdy way. Not weird in a creepy, sexual way. Well, 2 years ago, I bumped into him after not seeing him for probably a good 10 years. And where was he working? At the morgue. But let me tell you, he was looking good. I'm running out of time. Go to part 2. Follow my Instagram. So he was working at the morgue. And again, this guy was looking good. Here comes the part where I throw up. He asked me out on a date. And like I said, he was looking good. So I said yes. I was recently divorced. Well, we went out on a couple dates. Yes, we did the dirty. That's the most disgusting part. But the weird part out of all of this is that he always told me to act dead. He didn't want me to move at all. Again, I was not creeped out until I found out why he wanted me to do it. Well, I didn't hear from Gus for about a week, and I was very concerned. Well, one day on my way to work, I hear on the radio that they're looking for Gus. Obviously, they say his last name. When I tell you I was in shock, I had to go to the cops, let them know that I was in a relationship with him. There was a whole investigation, and they told me that he was sleeping with a corpse. Apparently, one of his coworkers walked in on him. Yikes.
Storytime about how I slept with my own dad. By the way, this story is anonymous. Now, keep in mind, I never knew who my dad was from birth, but I knew he lived in the same state as me. So I was a senior in college, and it was getting so hard for me to graduate. So one day I went in early to speak with our professor about the homework, and we had a new professor. I was so upset because our other professor was so lenient with me. He understood everything. I was going to have to catch this new dude up on everything. I was hoping he wasn't strict, but just like I thought, he was extremely strict. He went by Professor Tom, which was his first name because he said it made him feel old to go by his last. So graduation started coming up, and I was talking to my best friend like, girl, what should I do? I was failing so many of my classes, it was just so hard. Then when I told her we had a new professor, she was like, oh, girl, you screwed. So once me and her got to class the next day, she was like, oh, girl, he is cute. She's like, you know what you're going to have to do by the end of the semester if you're still failing, right? Like for part 2. Part 2, story time about how I slept with my biological father. By the way, this story is very anonymous. So my best friend was suggesting that I had to sleep with him to pass my classes. I did not want to take it there, but by the way my grades was looking, I had no choice. So I asked him to start tutoring me after classes. He agreed to tutor me and I got a lot closer to him. So one day I came in for tutoring and I locked the door. I told him I had a surprise for him just to show appreciation for him helping me. He was like, and what is that? Long story short, we did the do on his desk. Both had a great time. After that, my grades were not a problem. So the next day I was freaking out telling my best friend everything that happened. And she was kind of happy for me. So after classes, I went home and my mom told me my dad was coming over for dinner. She was like, honey, he's moved closer to us so he can get closer to you. She goes, he actually just started teaching after college. My stomach hit the floor. So I hear someone knock on the door and I am sweating. She opens the door. It's my professor. I blacked out and I don't remember anything after that.
Story time about how my friend in high school tried to sell me to pedophiles. So I was 14, it was my freshman year, and me and this girl, let's call her Elizabeth, had been friends for about 5 years. Elizabeth kept bragging about this 17-year-old boyfriend that went to a different school, and every weekend she would try to get me to come to the movies with them so I could meet him. But my parents were pretty strict, so most weekends they said no. But finally one weekend they said yes. It was a Friday night, and Elizabeth wanted me to walk to the movie theaters to meet her. My dad said no to that. He drove me instead, and he wanted to make sure that Elizabeth and the boyfriend were waiting outside so he could make sure I was there safely. And it's a good thing he did, because when we pulled up, Elizabeth wasn't with the 17-year-old boyfriend she had showed me. She was standing there with two 30-year-old men, like for a part 2. Alright, part 2 of my friend trying to sell me to a pedophile in high school. So originally, my dad thought that I was in on this and me and Elizabeth were like meeting up with older guys, and he was really mad at me. I had no idea what was going on, but at first he didn't believe me. So I texted Elizabeth, I asked her what was going on and where her boyfriend was, and she just kept telling me that I wasn't supposed to be here with my dad, I was supposed to have walked, and my dad should go home. At this point, my dad thought I was lying to him, and he grounded me, and he took me home straight away. I didn't even get out of the car. So I spent the whole night texting Elizabeth, and I told her that I saw her with the two 30-year-old men, and that I didn't know who they were, and that my dad took me home because I got grounded. And she was really mad at me, and I couldn't understand why she was so mad at me, because, I was 14, so I didn't really understand anything. And finally, she just told me that we would talk about it on Monday at school, like for part 3. Alright, part 3 of my friend trying to sell me to pedophiles in high school. So my dad realized I wasn't lying and got Elizabeth's parents involved, and her parents pretty much denied everything and told us that those two older guys were the boyfriend's older brothers. And then my dad pretty much told me to stay away from her, but that Monday at school, I went in and I talked to her, and she was still super mad at me, and I eventually found out that the whole thing was her idea. She told her boyfriend's older brothers that if they paid her $100 each, she would set them up with one of her friends, and that friend happened to be me. And my parents tried to get the police and the school involved, and they pretty much did nothing because there was no proof, and her parents were denying everything. And then my dad didn't let me go out by myself until I was 18. The end.
A cowboy walks into a bar, sits down, and orders a shot. And across the bar is a Mexican man sitting, staring at the cowboy. The cowboy takes the shot, slams it on a counter, and yells, TGIF! The Mexican man orders a shot, drinks it, slams it on a counter, and says, SPIT. The cowboy looks over at the Mexican and notices he's still staring at him. The cowboy once again orders a shot, drinks it, slams it on the table, and says, TGIF! The Mexican man fires back, he orders a shot, drinks it, and slams it on the counter, and says, SPIT! This goes on for a while. The bartender is confused and annoyed. So the bartender has finally had enough. He walks up to the cowboy and says, just checking, but do you know what TGIF really means? And the cowboy replies, Hell yes, I know what it means. Thank God it's Friday. So the bartender turns around and walks to the Mexican guy and says, excuse me, senor, but what does SPIT mean? The Mexican man takes his shot, slams it on the table. Stupid pendejo, it's Thursday.
I have a bearded dragon named Phil who I've had for about a year now. My whole family deeply loves him, and my younger sister Jane loves making TikToks with Phil. Yesterday, my sister came and showed me a TikTok she made of him. There's a trend where people put butter on dogs and an audio saying butter dog plays over it. Jane had done the same to Phil. It made me really upset because I had seen a video of someone explaining that this trend can be dangerous towards bearded dragons. This is because the butter sticks to their skin, and if they're put under their basking light, it basically heats up and burns their skin. I told Jane to delete the video and that she can't do stuff like this with Phil. I quickly got him out from under his basking light that she had put him back under, blender and bathed him, trying to get the butter off. My sister said I was overreacting and that it's a fun trend. I snapped at her and told her that I'm not letting her near Phil until she apologizes and promises not to do trends like this again. She got angry and told me that she wasn't apologizing for just wanting to have fun with him and I had no right to take him away from her. I put Phil back in his tank in my room and told her that she's not allowed to come take him anymore. My parents found out this morning and they're on her side. However, if she hadn't shown me the video, then Phil would have sat in his tank getting burned under the basking light and I wouldn't have known until it was too late. Am I overreacting?